So I'm just going to put this out there. Solo Power League was a mistake. Yep, I said it. No going back. That's all for the video. Goodbye. Okay, so let's backtrack a little. In a previous video, I suggested a fix for Power League to make it much more bearable, let's say. But after what's probably a very unhealthy amount of time spent arguing on Discord, I came to the realization that Solo Power League has a massive issue that actually cannot be fixed. I call this issue the Gold Prison Dilemma. Before we talk about that, we gotta get a little technical here and talk about probability. Probability is basically how likely something is to happen, and under probability, we have theoretical probability and experimental probability. To explain how this works, I'm gonna need you to pause the video and get yourself a coin. Now, if I told you to flip that coin and ask you what are the possible outcomes you will get, your answer would be heads and tails. So there are two outcomes, meaning you have a 50-50 chance of getting either heads or tails. This is theoretical probability, the number of results or outcomes that can be expected from doing something. For example, if you flip a coin, the outcomes are either heads or tails. If you roll a dice, the outcomes are any number between 1 and 6. So that's theoretical probability. Now I want you to pause the video again and flip that coin 5 times. And each time you flip it, note down whether you land heads or tails. Once you've done that, you'll have a certain ratio of head to tails. Maybe it's 3 heads and 2 tails, maybe 5 heads, maybe 1 head and 4 tails. This is called experimental probability. Simply, how likely you are to get either outcome, in our case heads or tails, when you flip the coin multiple times. Now, 5 times is obviously not enough to prove anything, but if you flip the coin 100 times or 200 times, then you will get a heads to tail ratio close to 50-50, meaning that you are just as likely to land heads as you are to land tails. So, as you can see, when you keep flipping your coin or rolling your dice for an extended period of time, your experimental probability turns into your theoretical probability. If that hurt your brain, let me simplify it for you. Basically, your likelihood of getting either heads or tails evens out over time as you flip the coin more and more. It becomes a 50-50 chance, which makes sense because there are only 2 possible outcomes flipping a coin. You guys can actually try this out for yourself. Flip your coin 200 times and comment down below the heads to tail ratio you got. I'm willing to bet that it's either perfectly 50-50 or it's very close to that. But how does it fit into Power League? Well, first of all, let's ask the question, what does it take to hit Masters in Power League? Alright, not Masters, let's say Mythic. What does it take to hit Mythic in Power League? There are 2 factors necessary to progress forwards in Power League. First of these 2 is luck. Luck means that you need a good team of randoms in order to progress in Power League. This is where the controversies begin because the most popular arguments are, quote, bad randoms are the reason that I'm still in insert rank, and its counter argument, quote, it's not the bad randoms, it's because you're bad that's the reason that you're still stuck in insert rank. And after a lot of debate, I found out that the second argument is actually true and that we can't blame randoms for our losses. But can this be proven mathematically? Well, here's the answer. In any match you play, your team will be you and 2 randoms. Your randoms will either be bad ones, as I've defined here, or good ones, i.e. the opposite of what I've defined here. And every time you match into the game, the randoms you get are also going to be like the coin flip from earlier, only this time it is in heads and tails. This time the coin will either land on good random or bad random. We already proved earlier on in the video that if you flip a coin enough times, you get a near 50-50 ratio of heads to tails. Basically, the odds of landing either outcome evens out. In that same way, when you play hundreds of power matches, the odds of you getting good randoms and bad randoms also evens out, meaning that you are just as likely to get good randoms as well as bad randoms. So if there is a 50-50 chance of getting good and bad randoms, then doesn't that also mean you would have a 50% win rate and not progress at all? The answer would be yes. If your good to bad randoms ratio is 50-50, you will not move at all. You'll be stuck at whatever your rank is right now. Then how do some people go from bronze to mythic with no problems at all? Remember how I said that there are 2 factors necessary to progress forwards in Power League? Well, this is where the second one comes into play, which is skill. Skill is basically your game knowledge, meaning things like map knowledge, knowing the meta, knowing picks and bans, and mechanical skill, which is the ability to play whatever brawler you pick really well. And this is where we come upon the gold prison dilemma. It's essentially this. In order to progress to higher ranks, you need to be exceptionally skilled at several brawlers and all the maps and their respective modes that are currently in rotation. Because if you think about it, people like Spen, Corey, Tensai meet the same types of bad randoms as you and I. You can see this very clearly in Spen's F2P2 Masters series. But in spite of this, they managed to push their accounts very high. And yet the average player is still stuck around the gold leagues, which is why I call it the gold prison dilemma. Because your luck with randoms in solo league evens out over time, it puts you in a situation where your skill becomes the deciding factor as to whether or not you progress. To put it simply, it stops being Power League and starts being Carry League. The way Solo Power League works makes it so that you will only progress to a certain rank if you can carry a majority of the games you play. Now obviously you're not going to have a perfect 100% win rate, but you need to be able to maintain at the very least a 51% win rate. And believe me, that's a lot of carrying. This also means that if you're stuck at a certain rank, let's say Gold 1, then you are only skilled enough to carry randoms until Gold 1 and not higher. In order to climb higher, you need to be able to carry randoms against enemies of higher skill than you face at gold, which once again emphasizes the prison part of the gold prison dilemma. So this begs the question of whether the system of having to carry yourself to higher leagues is fair. On one hand, you could argue that it places an unnecessarily high skill floor for an individual player in a game that's supposed to be about teamwork. But on the other hand, you could argue that, well, it's solo Power League, so it's fair that the game forces you to be exceptionally skilled as an individual and not as a team. But this conflicts with the idea of Power League being the quote-unquote competitive mode. Because if one player is playing significantly better than the other two, then the player is good, but the team is bad. The whole idea of Brawl Stars being a 3v3 competitive team-based multiplayer falls apart when you actually play its competitive game mode, which is Power League. Team Power League is better as a team-based 3v3 competitive mode, but it's often full of single bad players being carried by two good players, so it isn't exactly perfect either, but that's a topic for another day. Carrying your randoms is the only way you'll ever be able to progress through Power League if you ever want to reach the higher ranks. And while that may seem like a tall order, there's a big mistake that you're doing that's making it a lot harder. Watch this video here to find out what that mistake is and how to fix it.